book was composed. And the author of the book is a gentleman by the name of, we don't have a clue. Um, there's some guesses about it, but it's just the quickest thing just to say unknown. The setting is the court, the legal court of Persia, and it's kind of an interesting story, as a matter of fact. Um, here's a quick backstory. Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, those three books, deal with Israel after the 70 years. Right? You remember Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem, stole a bunch of people on two different occasions actually, and hauled them over to Babylon, about a 500-mile walk. Took about 4 months to get there. And so they were there because of idolatry. The Lord said, either worship me or you're off the land. They didn't, so he got them off the land. Anyway, Ezra and Nehemiah deal with, there was a remnant, not all of them, there was a remnant that came back from Babylon, went back to Jerusalem. And Esther deals with the most of the people decided to stay in Babylon. They were there. For instance, Daniel never came home. He stayed there the rest of his life. And Esther was this Jewish girl that becomes the queen of the Persian Empire through kind of an unusual circumstance. But this empire stretched from India to Ethiopia, which was about 2.1 million square miles. So we're not talking about Hardee County here. And so Esther fits between the chapters 6 and 7 of the book of Ezra. So let's get to the skeleton of the book. Okay, whoa. Let's back up. Technology's great when it works. All right, I need to back it up about probably two. I'm sorry about this. The one before this, I believe. Okay, yeah, chapters 1 through 5. Actually, I want to get that girl off of there because she's in the way. There we go. I didn't mean that like that, but yeah, they're in the way. They're always in the way. Chapters 1 through 5, there's a crisis on the horizon. It's anticipated in these first chapters. And the drama opens. There was the current queen, her name was Vashti. And the king had this great big banquet. I mean, this huge banquet. And kings kind of love to show off their harem, their women. And so he called for Vashti to come. And these guys were they were 3 sheets in the wind drunk. And so she said, no, I'm not coming. He said, get in here right now. She said, I'm not coming to parade myself in front of all these guys. And so the king's name was Ahasuerus. And because she refused to come, he said, okay, you're fired and get out of here. So he kicks her out of the kingdom. And now we've got a vacancy. And so this a beauty contest basically is held. And we got to replace this woman with somebody. And so this young Jewish girl, beautiful girl, didn't know she was a Jew, okay, at this point. And so she gets the crown. She wins the contest, and she is now the queen. So the next slide. Oh, she's in the way again. Sorry. Okay. Every story needs a villain. And in this story, there was a guy that tickles me to death. His name was Haman, and he was the prime minister. He was the prime minister, and he knew it. You know what I'm talking about? You ever seen these guys? You know, just kind of have that. That was this guy. Like he just scored the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. And he was just all about himself. Mordecai is Esther's older cousin, and he raised her in his home. And so he is a government official. And again, nobody knows her kin, and nobody knows she's a Jew. This is all kind of under the cover right now. And so he overhears, talk about Mordecai, overhears an assassination plot against Ahasuerus, who was the king. And he tells his cousin, Esther, somebody's going to kill him, you better watch out, So she's got this information. And So she tells the king, here's the king's sleeping one night and he can't sleep. So he says, oh, good grief, bring me the books. And so he want to read. And so he's reading through the chronicles of the kingdom, and he reads that this guy Mordecai basically uncovered this plot to kill him, and told the queen, and she told him, said, did we ever do anything for that guy? And she was like, no, I don't think we did. So he says, well, here's what we're going to do. And this is where it gets funny to me, okay? Mordecai wouldn't bow and scrape when Haman would come by, and Haman just lived on this stuff, you know. He's the prime minister, and when he walked down the street, people were supposed to do all this bowing and scraping, and he'd walk by Mordecai, and Mordecai was like, yeah, you know, I don't know if that's exactly what he did, but he didn't want anything to do with that stuff. So Haman now is mad at Mordecai, so he plots this scheme to kill all the Jews just because he didn't like this one particular Jew. So chapter 6 through 10, here's what happens. The night before, Esther was going to have a banquet. And the night before the banquet, the king can't sleep, and so he asks for these records to come, and he reads about this. And he finds out that Mordecai was the one that uncovered the plot, and he was never rewarded for it. And so he calls Haman, the prime minister. He says, Haman, can you come into the office? Yeah, what you need, king? And he says, what would you do for somebody that the king really, really wants to honor? Well, guess who Haman thought it was? Yeah, he was like, oh, well, you know, like Barney Fife. And he was like, well, what I'd do, I'd put him on a horse, and I'd have somebody lead him through the city, and I'd have everybody just make a big deal out of him. And I mean, just this great, big, elaborate thing. And the king goes, that's good. That's good. I want you to go get a horse and put Mordecai on that horse, and you lead him around the city. And he was like, wait, what? What? And he said, yeah. And he tells him the story. And he had planned this. He was going to hang Mordecai at some point. And so after the parade, he was so embarrassed. Guess what he did? He went home and hung himself on the gallows that he had built for Mordecai. So be careful how you plot against other people. Okay, help me out here. There we go. Need to go to the next one. That's okay. So I get ahead of myself on these things. Yes, I do. So, okay. I think that to me is just a funny story. Anyway, today, to celebrate this occasion of the Jews being saved, because once the king gave an order, he couldn't reverse it. And so here's what he did. Is I'll tell you what, I can't reverse it, but I will give you Jews. You can defend yourself. And so basically he did reverse it by telling them they could defend themselves. And this was called, to this day, the Feast of Purim is still celebrated among the Jewish people because of this saving of the Jews in the book of Esther. And so Mordecai then is appointed to take the place of Haman as prime minister, which that's just the cherry on top of everything to me. But here's the meat on the bones about this book. God saves his people through a series of strange events. Not everything that happens in your life is easily explained, right? I mean, to sit down and read through the book of Esther and say, well, I knew that was going to happen. No, you didn't know that was going to happen. That, the Lord has some stuff behind the scenes in our lives. And so there's a beauty contest, this pagan king, a pretty courageous woman. And so when she realized that she was brought to this position, she was told, Mordecai said, now you realize that you're a Jew. And Haman planned on killing all the Jews, and don't think you're going to get away. And she said, well, if I perish, I perish. One of the famous statements of the Bible that this young girl made that statement. And so, God's hand isn't limited to any boundaries. God can use lost people. In fact, throughout the Bible, he used, pagan kings, wicked, vile kings that you wouldn't vote for. But God said, well, this is my man for this hour. Cyrus is one of them. Nebuchadnezzar was one of them. And so God, he doesn't need what we think he needs to do what he needs to do. He can use any particular thing, which he did. So, okay, let's go to, how do you flesh this out in life? How much of your security do you think lies in your money? What if you lost all your money tomorrow? Would your security be gone? What if you lost all your property tomorrow? Would your security be gone? Does God bless us because of who we are? God doesn't bless us for our own benefit. He blesses us because there are people in our lives that need what he has given us. Now, he won't ask you, I don't think he will ask you to give every dime you have. And if he does, do that. But he knows we have needs. He knows that you have insurance. You've got bills to pay as well. And so, but God he's working in the circumstances of people, whether those people are good or bad. So just because somebody's not a Christian, don't discount their contribution to your life, okay? All right, let's run on here. Here's some life lessons from the book of Esther. Don't let adverse circumstances keep you from trusting the Lord. Well, if God loved me, this wouldn't happen. Not true, okay? So we have these ways of defining circumstances that defy God's word. Number two, don't think a difficult life prevents you from being used by God. Well, look at the stuff I've done in my life. Look at what I'm guilty of. Does that matter? Really? No. God can cleanse. He can restart any life at any time. God's protection is always present, even though it's not always visible. You can't always see where God's coming from, but he is coming from some direction. And it takes courage to speak up for your convictions and your beliefs. This young woman opened her mouth in the presence of the king. He found out she was a Jew. And she was probably very young at the time that all this stuff was going on. And so each of God's people, including you, which is us, has been prepared by God for some strategic. We're not here randomly. We're not here just to eat cream corn and tomato sandwiches. We have a much deeper purpose for being here than just taking up resources. You got a purpose in life. And a lot of people haven't found it. And I think that'll be the greatest day. In fact, I know it'll be the greatest day in your life when you discover God's purpose for your life, because our purpose is not our decision. Our purpose is our discovery. In other words, the wrong question to ask anybody is, what are you going to be when you grow up? Don't ask that question. The question to ask is, what has God designed you to be when you grow up? Because everybody in here is a tool. Everybody. Tools have a purpose. You go to Ace Hardware, they don't have, what's that for? It's not for anything. It's just $29.95. They don't sell stuff like that. There's a purpose for every tool. And I'm just telling you that our life fits perfectly in the hand of God. All of us. And so we have a purpose. And so the 17 historical books, we're now out of the books up at least to Esther. And the 17 historical books comprise the first portion of the Old Testament. And they give us the history of civilization from creation to the time of the Persian Empire, which is what we just stepped out of in the book of Esther. And the Bible is very, very specific and very clear about how the physical universe got here. Not everybody agrees with that, and not everybody's right. I'm just telling you. There is way too much evidence, not only physical evidence, but biblical evidence that the creation of the world took place in 6 days. I'm talking not 6,000 years, but 6 diurnal revolutions, sun up to sundown. Day 1, sun up to sundown. Day 2, and that's the way the Jews calculated time anyways. When the sun come up, that's when the day started. When it went down, that's when the day ended. We start at midnight. And so the way we calculate time is different than the way the Jews calculated time. But there is way too much evidence. Show me a person who believes in evolution, for instance, and I'll show you a person who absolutely refuses to accept facts. There is no way that evolution can be proved, period. Nobody has ever seen anything evolve. You say, well, no one saw creation, and you're right. You're exactly right. However, yes, sir. Yeah. That's true. That's true. For instance, did God, when God made dogs, did he make every breed of dog that exists now? No. So, yeah, you can interbreed and do all that kind of, but there's no such thing as a dogfish. You don't combine you don't combine those two. All right, there we go. The record of they record rather the history of the Jewish people from its inception to its days of deportation, and finally as it survived as a very small, insignificant nation. At one point, Israel was a pretty big deal. And then, because of their stupidity, and that's the only word really, they had the law. They were the only people in the world that were given the law from the mind of God, and they walked away from it, and they let the people around them. They were supposed to be the evangelical nation in Israel to influence other nations around them. Well, that's not what happened. Everything else seeped into their culture. And they became basically a pagan nation. As a matter of fact, there's a place in one of the prophets that said that the pagans were insulted about how pagan Israel was. It was like, man, they took it to a degree that we didn't even take it to. And so that's kind of the situation there. Now we're going to come to a different set of books, the poetic books. And the poetic books in Eastern thought, poetry is not the same as in the Western mentality. Our poetry is like this. We rhyme our terminal sounds. Roses are red, violets are blue, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-do. Ooh, there's a poem. Well, that is a poem in Western culture. In Eastern culture, they didn't rhyme their sounds. They rhymed their ideas, their thoughts. And so we're about to step into 5 of these books that are called poetic books. There we go. There's Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. Those are the 5 poetic books. When Israel sang, they sang the Psalms. This was their hymn book. And so what we're going to take a look at is the difference, okay? Eastern poetry is different. Eastern poetry rhymes its ideas and its truths and its philosophies, and it's kind of hard to recognize this as poetry because of the way we've been raised. When you took English, this is Tennyson and all those boys that wrote all this famous poetry, they rhymed all these words, and the Bible doesn't do that. So, all right. Help me out here, Anna. Can you just change it? All right. Now we need to move on to that. Okay. Okay, the divisions of poetry, that's where we are. Okay, these 5 books deal with 5 specific things that we need to learn in life. Number 1, the book of Job teaches you how to suffer. What? It teaches you how to do it. Are you going to suffer? You're going to suffer. So isn't it a good thing to learn how to do it? The book of Job, and I have had this question asked of me through the years, why do godly people suffer? The book of Job never answers that question. It does answer the question, when you do, here's how you handle it. Now, we don't like that. We want, well, how do you avoid it? There is no avoiding it. This is what sin has done to the human race. We're going to suffer. People are just wicked and vile, and the culture Wherever you go, I don't care what nation you go to, you're going to run into this. And so that teaches you how to suffer. The Psalms will teach you how to worship. You want to learn? Yes, sir. Yes, that basically is a purpose for it. And so the Psalms will teach you how to worship. David was the chief author. He didn't write them all, but this book just teaches you if you want to worship God, speak the words that he spoke about himself. And that's what the Psalms do. He inspired these. This is the way he wants to be spoken to. This is the way he loves to be praised. And singing about God is praise. Singing to God is worship. So if you want to worship the Lord privately, turn to the Psalms. And we don't know what tune, that these Psalms were set to. You can make that up yourself, but when you sing these, you are singing God's words back to himself. And then the book of Proverbs teaches you how to, that's my favorite book in the Old Testament, is the book of Proverbs. It tells you how to take care of your property, your house, your wife, your kids, your animals. It has built into it principles of just how to live life. Somebody disagrees with you, somebody fights you, somebody's talking about you. How do you handle that? Well, you hit them with a wrench. No, that's not what we do. And then the book of Ecclesiastes teaches you how to enjoy. We have a great opportunity to enjoy life, and my heart breaks for people that they're miserable all the time. Nothing's right, nothing's good. This is horrible. This is terrible. My heart breaks for people like that because there's too much wonderful activity that can be experienced in this life with family and friends. And well, this morning was a beautiful morning, just absolutely gorgeous. And thank the Lord for that. I was, Lord, thank you for the temperature is perfect, and so teaches you how to enjoy. And then the Song of Solomon teaches you how to love. This is a story about a young country girl that marries a king, and they're getting married. And they're talking to each other about how they love one another. And there are some, you've got to know where you are in the Bible before you apply certain principles of application. For instance, how do you interpret history? Is history symbolic? No. History is what it is. This happened on that day. This happened like that. Now, when you get into the Psalms, you got to be careful because you cannot interpret everything literally in the Psalms. For instance, Solomon talks about his woman and this girl that's going to be his wife. And he says something like this: your teeth are like the sheep that go down into the washing, and they come out evenly shorn. And we would say, he said she looked like a goat? What is he even talking about? She had perfect teeth. Just white, and so you can't interpret that literally. So you need to know where you are in the department of the Bible before. You can't go to Walmart and get eggs in the motor oil department. They don't have that there. So just know where you are. All right. Biblical poetry does not relate historical events. So if you're looking for history, these 5 books won't give you history. They relate the deepest issues of the human heart: anger, depression, happiness, shock, surprise, disappointment. The full range of human emotions is dealt with in these poetic books, and they dive into the questions of suffering. Honestly, why do people suffer? Well, most of it this is hard to say, but it's true. Decisions create events. Good decisions create good events. Bad decisions create bad events. And so a lot of the suffering, this was my fault right here. I lost the tips to 3. That was my fault. It was a bad decision. And so I can't say, well, if God loved me, I wouldn't have cut the tips of 3 fingers off. Well, God does love me, and if I had been a little more aware of what I was doing, I wouldn't have cut the tips of 3 fingers off. And so they serve as the hinge that links the history with the prophetic books. And we've just gone through the historical books. Then you come to this hinge, these 5 books of history that link what we're about to get into, not this week probably, but the prophetic books that prophesied things concerning Israel, concerning even us today that is still future, things that are future to us. All right? Let's run on here. Job. Y'all familiar with the book of Job? Blessings through suffering. The man was blessed at the end of the book, but he didn't see it coming. And it was written between 2000 and 1800 BC. This is the oldest book in the Bible. The author of the book is this same gentleman, unknown. We have a clue. There are some pretty good evidences that maybe Moses wrote it, but we don't know. Job takes place between Genesis 11 and 12. That's the historical place, the time reference for it. And the setting is a place called the land of Uz, which is Edom. This is where Moses lived for 40 years before he went back to Egypt and freed the people. All right? Give you a little bit of a backstory. I'm going to get them all here. Whoop. Nope. Okay. This was probably the richest man on earth. He was the Elon Musk of his day. And it narrates a series of really critical losses for Job. Things were going great. Stock market was through the roof. His football team won the national championship. I mean, everything was just going great for Job. And one day, the Bible tells us, the opening chapters of Job illustrates and narrates Satan came before the Lord. See, Satan has never been to hell. The angels also came before the Lord. And I don't know if this is like a regular requirement that these spirit beings have to appear before God, but anyway, they were there in the book of Job. And the Lord asked him, said, "Where have you been?" And Satan says, "Well, I've been in the earth. I've been going up and down and to and fro." He was looking for something. He was making like a grid. And he said, "Have you noticed my servant Job?" He said, "Yeah. I couldn't get past the fence. You've hedged him about. And I can tell you why he serves you and is such a godly man. I know why. It's because he's on the payroll and you're giving him all this stuff. And the guy is rich and everything he touches turns to gold." And the Lord was like, "Really? So that's what you think about Job?" "That's exactly what I think about Job." He said, "If you touch him and you break him, you drop the stock market and his team goes 0-12 or whatever, that'll break him and he won't worship you anymore." And so the Lord does something, I think, that shocks Satan. He says, "Okay, you do it." "Me?" "Yeah, you do it." And so he gave him permission to go down and impact Job's life. And he hit him in 3 very specific areas. We'll talk about those. But he just crash after crash after crash hit him financially. He hit him physically. He hit his family. And he was broken. He was just a broken man. And the 4 guys come that the scripture says are his friends. One of them is young. And he doesn't say anything for about 30 some odd chapters, but these other 3 guys are gossip mongers. They come and they sit down and they were like, "Okay, hey Job, hey buddy, what'd you do?" "What do you mean?" "Well, this stuff doesn't happen unless somebody's really been in some nasty stuff." "What'd you do?" "I didn't do anything." "Oh, come on, tell me. You can tell us. We're your friends. What'd you do?" And they wanted to hear some nasty gossip. And Job said, "I haven't done anything." And they kept hammering and kept hammering. "What, Job? This doesn't happen." And they gave these great big long reasons of why they were questioning him. And finally, Job gets a little ticked off at God. He says, maybe God does owe me an explanation. And so Job goes before the Lord and he starts asking him, why? I don't understand. I haven't done anything. And so the Lord kind of turns the situation into a job interview. Like God says, "Okay, Job, so you know how to run life, do you? I'll tell you what, let me ask you some questions." And it was kind of like the job interview. Maybe Job would be a better God than God. And so he asks him a series of 64 questions. And at the end of every question, God's waiting for an answer. And here's Job's answer. I don't know. Next. And you go to the next question. Oh, whoa, that was harder than the first one. And he didn't know. And finally, at the end, Job said, I just need to shut my mouth. And that's exactly what he needed to do. And so, but he does. He gets angry at God, but God restores him at the end of it. And it's kind of an unusual situation there as well. But there we go. Here's the drama. It opens with this review of Job's integrity and his wealth. The man had thousands of head of cattle. He had thousands of sheep. He had thousands of camels. He had all of this incredible wealth. And back in these days, there was, you didn't count your wealth with gold or silver because they didn't have paper money or anything like that. Your wealth was calculated by your livestock. And so the livestock was calculated, and that was how the wealth was figured. And so, honestly, he seems untouchable by the kingdom of darkness because there was this hedge, and I'm not sure exactly what this hedge was other than God's protection of him. And so we've already gone through that. Okay? Satan is going to move against Job in 3 significant areas. And everybody in this building has experienced what he has experienced. Maybe not to this degree, but here are the areas. There we go. All right, his family, his finances, and his flesh. The Lord broke him. The scripture says that these marauding natives came and stole all of his stuff, killed the servants, and stole the livestock. Now basically he's broke. All right, the bottom fell out of the stock market. And while that was going on, his kids were killed. That was the first thing. And he had 10 kids. And every birthday, and you pretty much have year-round birthdays if you got 10 kids. And so they were having a birthday party at their oldest brother's house. And the Bible says that a storm came out of the wilderness and hit the 4 corners of the house and killed all the kids. So what kind of a storm, what kind of a weather event can hit the 4 corners of a house simultaneously? A tornado. Exactly. So a tornado hit the house. Must have been a pretty well-built house. Falls on them, kills all of them. And so one guy runs and he tells, hey, man, your kids just got killed. And man, all your stock has been stolen, and the servants have been killed. And Job was like, oh my word, what next? And so Satan comes before the Lord. And you know what Job did in all of this, though? He praised the Lord. He did. And he took everything but his wife. Okay? And so, I've always pictured in my mind, she just lost 10 kids as well. She just got broke as well, okay? Because this is the family deal. And so here, she comes down the staircase one day and curlers in her hair, and she says, why don't you curse God and die? And he kind of says, no, God has blessed us, and, I'm not going to curse him now because we've lost some things. And so then he is afflicted, and Satan does this, with a condition called elephantiasis, and it's the great big boils break out all over this man. I mean, big infected spots, and he took a piece of broken pottery, and he's scraping the infection out, and he's sitting outside by the fire, and it's a terrible, awful situation. And then these guys show up, and they don't say anything for 7 days. They just sit around the campfire, and I don't know what they're doing, but they don't say anything. So he's crushed, and his friends show up, and he breaks the silence. This is Job. He says, man, I wish I'd never been born. You ever felt that way, by the way? I wish I'd never been born. I wish I'd have been stillborn. And so that kind of opens the dialogue, and he gets pretty graphic about he hates life. I wish this hadn't happened. I wish the night that I'd been conceived never took place. So, okay, let's... All right. Chapters 4 through 37 are the debates. And these chapters are these three friends. Actually, number 4 was a young man. The 4th guy that was sitting around a campfire was wiser than the other 3. These other 3 guys were idiots. Can I use that word? They were stupid. Blaming him. Have you ever been blamed for something that you didn't do? And they, well, what did you do? They just want to hear some dirt. You have. And Job said, there is no dirt. You understand? There is no dirt. I have done nothing. And so they didn't believe that. So we've got this round of debates. And then Job is suffering because Job is sinful. That's basically what they're telling him. And that is not always the truth. People suffer, like you said a while ago. It's like going to the gym. You know, you pay money to somebody to go lift heavy stuff. And why would you do that? Well, because it builds you. And life is not all, we don't come into the Christian life already in shape. Okay? You come into the Christian life, the Bible says, as a baby. Well, how do babies get stronger? You know? Have you ever noticed that babies are always, why are they always moving? Always. They're exercising. So, do they know it? No, that's just what they do. And the kids, you've got, every now and then I watch Immigration at the house, and my word, it's just like, Pop, can we do this? Hey, Pop, let's go outside. Hey, Pop, chase me around the house. Hey, Pop, do this, do that. And I'm like, good night. Can we sit down and watch Gunsmoke? And that ain't even on her agenda at all. And so this is what moving and exercise does. It gets you in shape. And so that's what suffering does for us. All right? Yes, sir. Kick them outside and let them run around the house. Now, we got folks in here old enough. I didn't want to come in the house. I want to stay outside. Because I came in the house, you need to make your bed up, or there's something, she had something to do. We stayed outside till she hollered, it's supper time, and then we would come in. But man, I didn't want to go in the house, and y'all know what that's about. So anyway, Job just insists, I haven't done anything, so the debate gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And Job accuses them of judging him wrongly, and that's exactly what they're doing. And people don't judge you wrongly. Something bad happens in your life, and they're going to want to know, what'd you do? So finally, Job appeals to God. And he becomes a little arrogant, a little self-righteous toward the end of all these debates. And he wants to know, why are you doing this to me? I haven't done a thing. And So he gets a little uppity even with God. And so he gives a 5-chapter closing argument claiming his innocence, that he has done absolutely nothing. And so Elihu, this is the young kid, probably a teenager, gives a more accurate view of Job's situation than the other 3 do. And he just tells him this. You just need to humble yourself before God. This has happened. All right? You're broke. You're sick. Your kids are dead. Humble yourself before God. And he did. And at the end, Job had twice as much as he had before. He had 10 more kids, which gave him 20. He had 10 probably, they were in heaven. And so the Lord gave him twice as much money as he had, and it was just, and the Bible says that he did this. At what point did the Lord turn the captivity of Job? When he what? When he prayed for his friends. These guys that accused him wrongly, these weren't friends, okay? These were accusers that came. And so, there are probably people in our lives right now that, well, maybe they've not been very nice to you. They've accused you. They've pointed their finger. They've done all this stuff. What is the biblical response to that? Pray for them. Lord, break their heart. So pray for people that don't like you. Is that a hard thing to do? Isn't it easy to pray for people that think you're great? It's easy to pray for people like you. It's easy to pray for people who like you. Not real easy to pray for people that don't like us, because our question is, what's wrong with them? If they don't like me, what's wrong with them? And it might not be them. Have you ever thought that everybody that doesn't like you might not be wrong? And there may be something that we need to adjust in our lives. Maybe we're a little arrogant and mouthy and da-da-da-da-da. And so, all right, we've got to stop right there. Thank you all for being here this morning. And good to see you ladies. Thank you all for being with us. And we're going to stop. We'll pick back up here in just a few minutes. So thank you for being here. God bless you.